Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Laura Pastrana in for Jim DeFede. Runoff election day saw a major shakeup in local politics. Voters sent a message that it was time for change. Hialeah and Miami Beach elected new commissioners, including one upset that toppled one of the most prominent political dynasties in Miami. And in the night's most closely watched race for mayor of the city of Miami, Eileen Higgins emerged victorious.
Well, we did it!
Eileen Higgins made history on Tuesday, winning a runoff to become the city of Miami's first ever female mayor. It was a race that was surprisingly civil by Miami standards and one that earned national attention. The Democratic National Committee threw its support behind Higgins, the former Miami-Dade County Commissioner. Her opponent, former city manager Emilio Gonzalez, was endorsed by President Donald Trump. In the end, it made little difference as Higgins earned nearly 60% of the vote to become the first Democrat to hold the office in nearly 3 decades. Now begins the work to fulfill her campaign promises, like easing the city's cumbersome permitting process and the affordability issue.
We are the tip of the spear of the affordability crisis in America. We've got to build more affordable housing.
Much as the Miami mayor's race signaled a clean break from the city's political past, other races indicated that voters wanted new blood. Rolando Escalona scored an upset win over Frank Carollo in the District 3 runoff for the Miami City Commission. That's a seat the Carollo family has held since 2009. In Hialeah, Willie Marrero won the runoff for seat 4 on the city council. He's only 22. Jaylene Perez won the race for seat 3. Those 2 runoff wins give Mayor-elect Brian Calvo serious momentum as he prepares to take office in January.
The race for the remaining open seat on the Miami Beach Commission, Group 1, went to Monica Matteo-Salinas. She defeated Monique Pardo-Pope after collecting more than 70% of the votes. Matteo-Salinas is the only new addition to the Miami Beach Commission. The 3 incumbents all held on to their seats in November. She comes on board as Miami Beach is embroiled in a number of issues, from scrutiny over its spending and affordability concerns to the recent removal of rainbow crosswalks on Ocean Drive and quality of life for beach residents. I talked with the commissioner-elect about what she faces as she takes office.
Monica, thank you so much for joining us fresh off your runoff win this week. Congratulations to you. You're going to be sworn in on Monday, so not wasting any time, hitting the ground running. So with that said, what is the biggest issue you think the city of Miami Beach is facing right now?
Sure. So happy to answer that question. Definitely the biggest issue right now is affordability. We do have an affordability crisis throughout Miami-Dade County and in Miami Beach as well. And so, absolutely, I'm going to focus on bringing a career source back to Miami Beach. There are folks who have found themselves unemployed, whether it's because of the seasonal nature of our jobs here, the hospitality industry, or other type of issues that's facing folks. We do need services, and we need affordability services, as well as possibly looking at some options for affordable housing. So there's a lot that I want to do, and all of it focuses on our residents and how can we help them have the best quality of life here in Miami Beach.
And you have a background in this. Obviously, you've been an aide to commissioners in the past. You live in the city of Miami Beach. You got kids there. So you're living this, experiencing this firsthand. But in your previous role, this is something you dealt with as well. Do you think that's kind of why people said we need someone who knows this particular topic, especially with affordability right now?
Absolutely. I have worked with residents here in the city of Miami Beach as a former commission aide, and they know how hard I worked for them. They know I always returned their calls and their emails in a timely fashion. They know I was responsive, I listened, I cared, and I got results. I got stuff done for them. And people really want a government that they can interface with, that listens, that will help them. That's really what public service is about and government is about. It is a service position, and I really do love helping my neighbors. So this is an honor, a true honor.
Your victory in the runoff specifically was, decisive, garnering more than 70% of the vote, technically nonpartisan races in these at-large seats. But what do you think the message is that these voters were trying to send by electing you with such a wide margin?
I think the message is that experience matters, and people know that I was very qualified to be a commissioner, And I had a lot of experience under my belt with, volunteering with my kids' PTAs and serving on multiple boards and committees and working as a commission aide. And at the end of the day, I was the more experienced candidate. And I think the message is people want to trust their local government.
Part of trusting the government is making sure that things are being managed well, that there's transparency. But there have been claims from State Representative Fabian Basabe that there is a lack of financial, transparency, that there's been mismanagement. And an audit has just been announced from the state of Florida to sort of audit the city of Miami Beach. This is now going to be something that you as a commissioner will have to deal with. How do you respond to those allegations, and how do you plan to tackle this moving forward?
Well, we all support transparency in government. So, if an audit does indeed happen, then we will open up the books and open up the doors and, allow them to look at whatever they need to look at. And we all want to be better and do better. And that's what we'll do.
Let's talk about some of your campaign promises. I looked over your website, and you had quite a robust list of your vision for the city and some of the things that you were running on. Let's start with the trolley service. You want to expand trolley service. We all know transportation traffic seems to just be getting worse by the day. What exactly is your plan to expand the trolley service, but more importantly, actually getting people to use it, to stop driving their cars and to use these alternate forms of transportation?
Yes, very important. So I think one of the barriers to riding the trolley is that people don't want to wait for a very long time in the hot sun at the bus stops, when they have to get to work and then they're all sweaty. And so if they only waited 2 to 4 minutes, then more people would take the trolleys. Similarly, if people needed to go grocery shopping, if they didn't have to wait so long, I believe they would take the trolley more often, which is why I've proposed putting more trolleys in the fleet. So that way they can run more efficiency and effectively. And, cleanliness is another issue that I've heard about complaints. And so, let's make sure our trolleys are cleaner and safer and a more functional ride for folks. And I do believe that people will get out of their cars and take the trolley if they know that it will come quickly, it's on time, and they don't have to wait in the hot sun for the trolleys. So that's my first big issue that I want to tackle. I think people will get out of their cars if they have reliable public transportation.
Trolleys would just be on the beach, right? Because another, issue that a lot of people say is they want to get from the beach to, the city of Miami. They want to cross over those bridges, and public transit would be a great way to do it, but that has not been available. There's been lots of talk over decades at this point, extending the Metro Mover, things like that. That seems very unlikely, but would trolley service possibly extend to some sort of connection to the city of Miami?
That's something that we could explore, doing some type of, partnership with the city or the county. Now that I know that, Eileen Higgins was recently elected as the new mayor of Miami, we'll see if there's some type of partnership that we can do there. And, of course, we have our bus system, which works really well, Miami-Dade County bus system, and anything we can do to talk to the county about increasing bus services would be great. I would be in full support of that.
All right, but let's get back to affordability specifically, because transit, that all plays a role. Some people unfortunately are having to live in their cars at this point because it's just too expensive to, pay first, last month's and security on an apartment, on a studio, on an efficiency here. The rent that I paid when I was living on the beach 13 years ago would be a dream come true for people living there now. Talking about you wanted to increase the city's affordable housing index. So basically what you're saying you want to do is you want to increase the number of affordable housing properties, but also increase the people who are making enough money to afford those places. So this is kind of a two-pronged approach, right? How are you going to tackle this?
Well, it's definitely a two-pronged approach. That's a good way to put it. It's a very deep issue because it comes back to our housing inventory. And, if government should be in the business of, maintaining and purchasing affordable housing units and buildings, some people think they should, some people think they shouldn't. Also, it depends on the private sector as well in terms of how much housing is built and how much housing is available. And it also depends on, folks have short-term rentals. And so again, that's a private sector issue. So if they want to turn apartments into short-term rentals, there's not a lot we can do about that. I mean, there are certain zones and districts that it is outlawed, but there are other zones and districts where short-term rentals are allowed. And that does take away from our affordable housing and our housing inventory. So, there's a lot that goes into this, and we'll see. One of the ideas that I had suggested was perhaps purchasing apartments that were, in a short sale or foreclosed apartments where, that could be a cost saving to the city to buy them below market value. It's something that we will have to explore. And I'll have to see if my other colleagues on the commission want to even tackle the owning property and having the city manage a portfolio of units.
But earlier you had also touched on this idea of like career resource for the people who are unemployed or underemployed, because there are people out there who are, very hardworking. They're working 40, 50 hours in service jobs. They're just not making enough to make ends meet when you add up the rent and the car payment, because for right now they do need a car to get around, the utilities, and then add in groceries to the mix. So you mentioned that career resource. What exactly are you thinking in terms of helping people in that regard?
Well, if we can get the Career Center South Florida office here again on Miami Beach, it can help folks who find themselves unemployed look for jobs. If they don't have a computer at home, they can apply at the Career Source Center. They have case managers who can help them, look for jobs, print their resume, maybe even, tweak and adjust their resume, because a lot of folks don't have computer skills. Of course, depending on what they have at home, some folks don't have computers or internet access at home, so that might be a good idea for them to be able to use the Career Source Center. And also they can offer job training assistance. Maybe they'll offer classes. It really depends on the county at this point, but we do need those services for our residents here in Miami Beach.
Do you think there needs to be a slowdown to the overdevelopment, or let's call it just development, because overdevelopment suggests that it's out of control, and that's really, up to the beholder, so to speak. So do you think that there needs to be a slowdown in development on Miami Beach?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we have a very nice, charming, low scale feel to our beach. We're a beach town, and folks really like that. We do have development projects. We have several every year, and sometimes it's office space that's built. Sometimes it's housing units. Sometimes, in the past, it's been even short-term rental buildings and hotels. So we do need to make sure we're keeping a close eye on all of these projects to make sure we're not overbuilding in one area, such as hotels or short-term rentals. And we really are working with neighborhoods to make sure we're responsive to what our needs are in Miami Beach, and not just, having a lopsided take on what needs to be built and what has been built in the past. So we need to have a measured approach at our development.
And one last question, just as we wrap things up and as you await your swearing in on Monday, what do you want to say directly to the people of Miami Beach?
Well, first, I'd love to just thank everyone for their love and support, and supporting, my vision and my campaign. And I've met so many people, and I've made so many great friends throughout this whole process. And I'm just really humbled by their support. And I'm going to work extremely hard to make a positive impact in Miami Beach. And I'm just so grateful for everyone's support. And I'm also grateful, Lauren, for you for having me today. Really, truly, thank you for this opportunity.
Up next, addressing the homeless situation in Miami. Is it getting better or worse? I'll talk with one of the most prominent advocates for people dealing with homelessness when Facing South Florida returns. Welcome back. The growing economic uncertainty many people in South Florida are facing could lead to an increase in homelessness. It remains a complex problem with no easy solutions. Service providers say a lack of affordable housing in our area is making things worse. The federal government disagrees and wants to restrict federal funding to focus on mental health treatment. Ron Book is the chairman of the Homeless Trust. He thinks criminalization is the wrong approach, but he's hopeful as a new face takes over at Miami City Hall.
Let's dive right in between the voters I've spoken to, the elected officials. You've got the new mayor of Miami, you've got new commissioners in Hialeah, Miami Beach, and also the city of Miami. Affordability is the crisis here right now. So many people are struggling to make ends meet with rent, utilities, groceries, you name it. What does that all mean when we look at the overall homelessness picture in our community? It seems almost though as the face of homelessness is changing, because you've got people with jobs and children struggling to find a place to live at this point.
Well, all of that, Lauren, all of that is correct. And the Miami-Dade County Homeless Trust, which is obviously the lead agency in Miami-Dade County, and we have been for 35 years in our effort to end homelessness, is obviously not a one-size-fits-all model, and we look at it in the broadest sense of its words of ending homelessness, and all of our providers which fit out underneath us. The community has really empowered us over the last 35 years to lead not just our community and not just our state, but the nation in creating innovative ways, not only to get people off the streets and into shelter and housing, but to make certain that as it relates to what we call rapid rehousing, which oftentimes is about how do you work to avoid somebody becoming homeless, is part of what we do in the continuum. So when we talk about the face of homelessness changing, you couldn't be more correct. 1 in every 4 individuals that is homeless or threatened to be homeless are really in that over 55 senior citizen population. That's painful. It is not only that, we've got the challenges that were created by the passage of House Bill 1365, which we doubled down on our efforts to create more shelter and more housing. We took the challenge as opportunity, and no different than the changes at the federal level in what they believe are the priorities to ending homelessness, which in part is, relates not just to what is affordable or not affordable, but they want to drive a process that's driven by treatment and a process not only on treatment, but truth of the matter is they want accountability, and that is why they are de-emphasizing permanent and moving back towards more of a transitional housing program like we've set up at Mia Casa, where everybody that lives at Mia Casa, which we purchased, an old ALF, we reconditioned it, paid to recondition it. Our tenants live on a month-to-month lease situation. They all sign a lease, they pay their rent, a third of what their income is each month, but that's transitional. You look at what we did down in Cutler Bay when we bought the La Quinta Hotel, now known as Hideaway Bay, permanent supportive housing for senior citizens. Every individual that lives down there signs a lease, agrees to abide by the rules and the regulations. As part of that, we're going to be more aggressive at encouraging the participation in services that otherwise help continue to create stability in their lives. Go ahead.
You mentioned that these seniors are facing, the being unhoused and facing homelessness. And a lot of them, they've lived in their home perhaps for many years, but they can't afford, the upkeep and maintenance and the property taxes and things like that. But there's been this trend, specifically in the state of Florida, touching on that legislation of criminalizing homelessness, with the law making street sleeping illegal. But according to the Homeless Trust biannual tally in August, county's homeless population still went up. So do those numbers actually back up the point that criminalizing this is not the answer?
Well, let's take that apart just a second. So first of all, if you look at my city of Miami numbers, I was down. You look at Miami Beach numbers, I was down. Countywide, I was up by just under 2%. So when you look at it, yes, I went up in my summer count slightly. But if you go back and you look at my January over January count, my January 2025 count, and we measure January count over January count, not January count over summer count, because of the seasonal shifts in things. At the end of the day, when we're all done, I remain encouraged that we see a light at the end of the tunnel. We're down. We've gone in the 3.5 decades of the trust's existence. We have reduced unhoused homelessness in our community by 90%, and we have been able to sustain that. It doesn't mean that you may not get every 6 months a new count where you're up slightly, but as long as your overall counts are continuing to trend down, as long as you're not, remember, if you look at my January count, my sheltered population was about 2,700. If you look at my August count, my sheltered count was down to a little over 2,500. Some of that relates to 1365. Some of that relates to bringing online more permanent supportive housing units. I don't know if it makes sense to the average listener, but here's what I know. From a business standpoint, we've been able to show our community a great return on investment. Our streets don't look like the streets that Alberto Carvalho is now in California, where when we started, we had a little over 8,000 unhoused. LA had a little over 11,000 unhoused. Tonight in our community, we're under 1,000, while in LA, they're up to 79,000.
And those numbers are countywide?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
So narrowing down the focus just a little bit, you mentioned, Miami Beach, city of Miami, new mayor, changes at City Hall. Are you hopeful for the future and what, Mayor-elect Eileen Higgins can do for the homeless situation in the city of Miami?
Eileen Higgins has been an advocate and a champion on behalf of the homeless in our community. Our relationship with our partners at the city of Miami has never been stronger, not in 35 years. Francis Suarez and that city commission led by Commission Chair Christine King has been nothing but fully supportive of what we do. Now that we have Eileen Higgins replacing Francis Suarez, I look at nothing other than a shift of her from the county. She helped us leverage Miami Beach so that they had skin in the game, if you will, by putting money on the table because they don't charge the tax over there. She's been nothing short of a great champion at the county, and we look for her to be a champion at the city of Miami, and we look at continuing to grow our partnership. We are a community that really does care. And Lauren, during the holidays, it's always important to remember about giving. But it's also a point in time where we say thanks. And I want to say thanks to the community for not being what a lot of people call us. We are a caring community that cares about the least, the last, the lost, and the forgotten. The reason we've been declared the national best practice model 6 times under both Republican and Democratic administrations is because we have a model that meets people on the streets and brings them in and brings them into treatment and brings them into programs and brings them into transitional and permanent supportive housing.
Ron, it sounds like you have all the necessary components to tackle this, continuing issue in our community. But last question, is outreach, is spreading the word an issue? Because I'm sure there are families out there who are one emergency, one missed paycheck away from potentially being out on the streets. Can they preemptively seek help in the event that they think they might find themselves homeless soon?
Boy, did you ask the greatest question you could have asked to end the interview. So into the first of the year, we are so excited. We are about to have an opportunity to announce a major national partnership with a group, philanthropic group, that is in the process of identifying 10 communities across the country to focus on what? Rapid rehousing, to focus on how do you keep people housed? The very people you started this interview asking about. Those people that are vulnerable, those people that are living paycheck to paycheck, those people that are living on subsistence wages, the things you and I learned in economics 101, 201, and 301 when we were in college. We're about to announce a partnership at exactly the right time as we are finally getting to see that light at the end of the tunnel and legitimately reach an end to homelessness. Functional zero is what we're going to call it, as Francis Suarez and Daniela Levine Cava have called as mayors, and our chairs of our Board of County Commission and City Commission have. And I'm going to repeat, excited as hell about Eileen Higgins, excited as hell about her picking up the torch and continuing what she did at the county on being a champion of homelessness, and in particular, that growing group of senior citizens that we know is our most vulnerable population of homelessness.
We'll be right back after the break. That does it for us today. Thank you for letting us be part of your Sunday morning. We want to hear from you. Email me your thoughts on the show at lpastrana@cbs.com. Thanks again for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.